the feast of Christ the King in traditional Latin Mass, the Tridentine Mass, the Mass of the Ages. Calendar falls on the last Sunday of October. The feast of Christ the King in traditional Latin Mass calendar falls on the last Sunday of October. This feast was instituted in 1925 by Pope Pius XI. It was instituted to remind the faithful of the sovereignty of Christ over all aspects of life, society, and creation. In its encyclical Quas Primas, Pope Pius XI originally placed this feast on the last Sunday of October. This is because, according to the timing, he intended to emphasize the reign of Christ over all earthly realms before the Feast of All Saints. As it is, they said leadership by example. The leader moved and his followers followed. And so he intended every last Sunday of October for the Christ the King, which after showing Christ to the world as the sovereign, the King of the world, and after adoring the King, then comes 1st November, the Feast of All Saints, where we say these are some of the followers of this King himself. And when you look at the saints and how they have struggled following the path of their leader, who became king not through political forces or any other thing, but through humility and going through the cross. When you look at the saints and you see the nature which they are now, there will be that impression that this kingdom is real, and this kingdom is something everybody should wish to belong. That is the reason why the leader leads first and the people follow. So that when the last Sunday, like today of October, the Christ the King, then the first Sunday, 1st November, we celebrate the Feast of All Saints. Now, knowing also that he is not only King of heaven, but is sovereign, he holds sway over heaven and earth, the King of all hearts, the King of all souls. And so, that is one of the reasons the Pope, as of then, 1925, fixed this feast on the last Sunday of October. Another reason he fixed this feast on the last on this time is to use it as a counterpoint to secularism and political upheavals. That is political disorders, the political disturbance, political uprising and insurrection that was the norm and that was actually affecting society at that time. The terrain, the world that time is deep, more in secularism. And in the politics of that time, it was not easy either, because the godfathers, political godfathers and all have been, they claim to be God, as in they hold your source of livelihood and other things, that unless you pay allegiance to them, you may not be able to be the next king that is coming, or you may not be able to take over this political position or the rest. And to show that they are your God, they even sent for and have you killed. So it is happening in that time. It is not in our era that it started, but I am beginning to feel that what is happening in our time, in our era, is far, far beyond what happened that day, those days, in those centuries, in 1925 before 1925 and beyond 1925. So this is the main intention that Pope Pius XI wants to emphasize, that in the midst of the troubled world, we should know that Christ is a king and we owe him our allegiance. The readings which the Holy Mother Church presented to us according to the traditional Latin Mass liturgical calendar is from Colossians chapter 1 verse 12 to 20 and the Gospel of St. John chapter 18 verses 33 to 37. These two readings, and especially the first reading, highlight the essence and nature of his kingship over all creation. We shall discuss briefly 5 ways or points in which these two readings have highlighted it. There are so many ways. When I was making research and reflecting on this, there are so many ways, but we are going to highlight on 5 only. Number 1, Christ's kingship in creation, which in the first reading you can get that in Colossians chapter 1 verse 12 to 20. In St. Paul's letter to the Colossians, Jesus was presented to us as the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every Christian. Colossians chapter 1 verse 15. Christ is not just a ruler among rulers or one great prophet among many. He is the eternal Son of God, through whom all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Colossians chapter 1 verse 16. His kingship is foundational through this verse, as you can also tell, as this scripture puts it, all things hold together in him. That makes his kingship highly foundational. It is rooted because all things hold together through him. Without him, nothing should either exist. Colossians chapter 1 verse 17. We recognize Christ as the creator and king of the universe. We also acknowledge that his kingship is not restricted to the heavens alone, but also has intimate authority over land and sea, that is the earth, and the souls of each and every one of us. In our wisdom, the Holy Mother Church has come to encourage us and also remind us that in the midst of the uncertainties of life, and especially in this our religious and political era that seems even worse than the previous ones, Jesus Christ as King still holds unqualifiable, unquantifiable sway over the earth and all that is in it. He sees and knows everything, and he has arranged things so that he can separate things and unite things in his own way and in his own time, and not in our own collective or individual time. Second reason why these two readings highlight the essence of his kingship is that Christ's kingship in redemption. Christ's kingship has to do with sacrifice.